asleep at like 4, woke up at 5, and I was like, oh, good, I have plenty of time. I have like an hour. And then I fell asleep for another hour.
That's just the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah.
Make sure my autofocus is off. I hate this thing. I hate that it doesn't stay off. I have to like reset it every fucking time I use my camera. I should go into my registry files and change whatever toggle that is. But I'm probably going to forget after the show anyway.
Excuse me. Well, obviously I'm not prepared.
Obviously, yeah.
I'm barely awake.
It's okay, it's okay. I'll be prepared for both of us. I've got, let's see, 6 or 7 tabs pulled up.
All right. Let's
Something.
see if this crashes Discord. Hey, it didn't.
Hey. At least something's going right. Let's go. Cool.
Awesome.
So, like I sent you, trying to wake you up because I'll send you those texts. We got a release date for Bayonetta 3, finally. They put out a trailer and everything. Nintendo decided, hey, no E3. Well, we're not going to do an E3 Direct. We're just going to throw out trailers one day at a time. We got a Kirby trailer the day before. We got our Bayonetta trailer now. Looks pretty cool. There's an interesting thing about this version of Bayonetta. All right.
I didn't realize we got another. I saw the Kirby one.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen the Bayonetta one.
Yeah. Bayonetta 3 has gotten its official release date, which is going to be, I had it up in front of me, October 28th. So just before Halloween.
Oh, cool.
There's also going to be a Trinity Masquerade edition that has been announced with it. So if people want their like special edition stuff, that's going to be there, as always.
Okay.
And more importantly, though, I guess more importantly, the controversial thing, which I personally don't have a problem with, is the Naive Angel mode that's being added to the game, which they call a revolutionary feature that will allow more people to fully enjoy the game. Basically, all it is it is a censored version of the game, but a creatively censored version of the game, where you don't ever have to see Bayonetta's bare ass. To me, this seems like a good compromise, that we can still have a game like Bayonetta 1, but also a game like Bayonetta 2. Right, so like it's something you trigger on, and the regular game is still there at its full rating for the people who want to enjoy it the way that it is. I like that, it's a good compromise.
Yeah, I mean, if they want to do it, if they want to take the time and have 2 modes, then as long as you can turn it on or off or whatever,
And they're being artistic about it, which is my biggest thing. I hate how censorship ruins art. One of my favorite forms of censorship was Brutal Legend, which had an optional bleeping mode, so you could just censor out all of the swears, which actually I think the game's better that way, because it's funny as fuck to watch the game with all the bleeps and stuff censoring Jack Black out. Right? Unintentional genius, but it's a great mode. And I like stuff like that where it actually adds to the art of the game and doesn't like subtract from it.
Well, that's cool. Is it also, so it doesn't actually change the gameplay at all? It's not like an easy mode or anything?
No. It's just, it censors the risque content. That's all it is.
Oh, okay.
In creative, artistic ways. Very tasteful censorship. Not just like a 2 naked women in the game that just have glowing lights around them so you can't see them being nude. Devil May Cry 5.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the hentai censorship, right? You either have the black boxes or you have the shine that just blocks everything. It's like,
yeah. It looks like you can play as a different character as well.
Yes, you can play as Viola, who is
that this guy? This guy with a hat?
Viola's a girl.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, there's a girl with like different colored hair.
Yeah.
Multicolored hair, I should say. But there's also with a hat, but maybe you're not playing as him.
Maybe not.
Look briefly like you were, but I'm just looking at the trailer.
Yeah, it looks like a fun game. I think
it
looks more fun than Bayonetta 2. Right? I thought between the two, Bayonetta 1 was still the stronger game. Not that 2 was bad. In fact, I thought it was an okay follow-up. A lot of times either a sequel is better or it just stinks by comparison. It was about as good. I just thought the first one was a little bit stronger. This one looks like it might actually be better than the first one so far. I don't know. I'm going to have to see a lot more of the game, but it's promising based off of the trailer.
So in the first one, they had like all the moves that showed her bare ass. Yeah. And in the second one, they kind of over censored. Is that what
sort
happened?
of the way they made it work, right? Because it was a Nintendo published game, first and foremost, is they kind of just didn't show anything. I wouldn't even say like they over censored. She was just kind of like in her clothes the whole time, which again, it's not a problem, but it's just like a very stark difference from 1 to 2.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. And I think this is a good compromise. The Trinity Masquerade Edition, for people who like it, will come with an art book because everybody likes their art books. All the concept art.
Yeah.
As well as, I think, reversible Switch covers, right? You know, like how the game case have their cover. You can put in different ones other than just the default one.
Mm-hmm.
Which I even kind of like the default box art. It's reminiscent of the first Bayonetta box art, so it's really good, you know, with a bloody moon behind her. Apparently, the art book is 200 pages worth of concept art.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's a pretty good art book.
Yeah,
it's probably going to be worth it. And the original Bayonetta, this was another like side announcement, is finally going to be coming to the Nintendo Switch as a standalone physical release on September 30th for only $30. Because it's an old game, and they don't believe in charging you full price for a game that old.
Even Nintendo won't charge you full price for a game.
Yeah, of all people, right? They'll charge you full price for Super Mario Brothers 3 again, though, which is way older, but not Bayonetta.
Yeah.
That's why I don't have to say it with certain pitch. They don't believe in charging you for a game.
Amazing.
Yeah. But I'm excited. I like Bayonetta. I like the games. I don't really like her much as a character. And I was talking to somebody. I think I've come to the conclusion why. Right? And I think it's because I really like Lara Croft as a character. And Bayonetta's personality is almost like a discount Lara Croft.
Yeah.
Right? Because otherwise, she checks all the boxes.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's my only hang up on her. But I like the games. I like the way they play. She's still a fun character. There's a lot of good dialogue, a lot of good scenes. I can highly recommend them.
Yeah. I never actually played them. I've just...
Oh, you've never played them?
No, I've only just seen like gameplay footage and trailers and things like that. So...
Apparently, it also launches on the same day as Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Not that I think these are competing audiences with each other. I think both games will probably sell exactly the same amount they would have sold anyway.
Yeah. I don't think they compete at all.
Yeah. I mean, there might be some crossover, but I think it's a very, very narrow Venn diagram.
Yeah. I would concur with that. What do you think about I see they also released a trailer yesterday for Time on Frog Island.
I haven't seen that one.
I was like, what? What is that? Apparently some other game that they released a trailer for.
Yeah, no, I did not see that one. The only other trailer I saw was the one from like 2 days ago, because they're like doing like a big trailer a day. Or was it 2 days or yesterday? Whatever. It was Kirby's Dream Buffet.
Yeah.
Which looks pretty fun. It's interesting how much Kirby we're getting. I don't know if there's like an anniversary or something going on right now. There's always something going on. But we're getting 2 Kirby games within the same year, which I think is crazy for going most years without a single Kirby game. Let's see. It's supposed to be this summer. They didn't give a release date, but it's supposed to be this summer, which we're soon running out of. It's got to either be like this month or next month.
Yeah, but so anyway, did you look at the trailer? It looks like it kind of looks like
It's Gourmet Race.
well, some people have said it looks like what's it called? Fall Guys.
Yeah, a lot of people say it looks like Fall Guys, which I could see that, but like also, it's Gourmet Race from Kirby freaking Superstars and stuff like that. You know, like
Gourmet Race.
Hey, have you ever seen somebody play Gourmet Race? It was okay. So on the Super Nintendo, right? There was a Kirby game that came with like multiple different game modes in it, right? And you could go down into Gourmet Race, and you could literally 2-player side scroller race somebody, and you weren't just supposed to get to like the end faster. You're supposed to try to eat as much food as possible while racing, right? So it would be like Kirby versus DDD. That's even where like that one like really, really known Kirby song is from. It's from Gourmet Race. And it's like da 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 da.
Indeed.
Yeah, that's really all this is. This is just an extreme version of Gourmet Race. Did they possibly take inspiration from Fall Guys? Very likely, but I mean, that's the video game industry. Everybody takes inspiration from everything. It's like, oh, that looks like a fun game everybody enjoys. How can we incorporate something like that into something we're working on?
Yeah. Although it's only 4-player.
Yeah.
So it's not like how do you play with like 30 people in Fall Guys? So.
Yeah. It's like just a racing obstacle course kind of wipeout type thing.
Yeah.
You can use copy abilities.
Interesting.
Which, I mean, is already a step up from Gourmet Race, because as far as I remember, it was only Kirby and DDD. So that was like a 2-player competition. We're doubling it.
Outstanding.
Yeah. But it looks fun. It's going to have both local and online multiplayer, so play against friends far and wide.
And there's a naive angel mode that allows you to block out parts of Kirby.
What would you even block out? Just all of him? You just wrap him
the
up
round
like a
part.
mummy?
I don't know. Just just making up stuff as I go along here. I just woke up. Give me a break.
I mean, you might need it. I mean, Smash Brothers Kirby can suck up Bayonetta and he gets her haircut.
Yeah.
And her makeup and glasses. It's very weird.
All right.
But yeah, it looks like a fun game. Nintendo's dropping a lot of stuff lately. But what they seem to be dropping more is the ball. Or at least as what people are accepting, right? So apparently Nintendo has warned people against playing the Switch in high heat with the current heat waves going on in Tokyo and UK. Because it might be damaging to your Switch. Which, honestly, this is the first I'm hearing about it. And that's because, they're concerned because temperatures in Tokyo are reaching like 95 degrees and parts of the UK are reaching 90. And you might not want to play your Switch in these temperatures. And I'm just like, bitch, I live in Texas. I've been playing these temperatures the whole time and you're just now warning me? 90 is like an average spring day here. What are you talking about?
Yeah. I mean, you can tell when things like that start to overheat. Like,
yeah, you can feel it.
I've had my phone. You know, if you hold your phone out and it's sunny and it's 90 degrees, it'll start to overheat.
Oh, especially if it's like completely black.
Yeah, yeah. I've had that happen. Or I've had it start to slow down, like in the car before the car can, cool off and stuff like that.
Yeah. Apparently it's not as big of a deal. They're just warning if it spikes over, though, again, here in Texas, I've dealt with days above this. But they say that you should only operate your Nintendo Switch within the temperature ranges of 41 to 95 degree Fahrenheit, which is 5 to 35 Celsius for people overseas.
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain I've operated mine in like 102 degrees before. But not for extended periods. I don't know. It's probably fine.
Yeah. Just be reasonable.
Yeah.
I don't think that's anything. I mean, I guess it could be news to some people.
Yeah.
We've never.
Well, this one is crazy. I figured this should be common sense, but apparently common sense with tech stuff doesn't exist.
Yeah.
The Switch dock should not be placed in any area that traps heat. But that should also go for like any of your console electronics, even back in the days when we had VCRs.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Why are they saying this now? I mean,
honestly, all of this information probably should be in the instruction manual that came with the Switch, but nobody reads that stuff anyway.
Yeah, probably is. But nobody reads it.
Oh, dude, nobody reads anything.
Yeah,
your phone probably.
My dock is. Yeah, my dock is like out sort of in front of my TV, the one over there anyway. So.
Yeah, you don't really want to tuck it behind the TV, which I know a lot of people do just to keep it out of the way.
Yeah.
I think my brother actually has his tucked behind the TV too, out in the garage of all places.
Yeah, I like it where it's easy to access. It's not like in front of the TV; it's to the side, but it's pulled out so that it's easy to just pop it in. Speaking of which, they are coming out with a dock for the Steam Deck, right?
I was told that they were planning on it. That was in the earlier announcements, that a dock was supposed to be made, but it wasn't coming with it at first, and at best all you could do was just use the type of USB cable to pseudo dock it, but that's it. That's all I know.
Yeah, you can get a USB-C to HDMI cable.
Which I already have one of those. Actually, I think I have one plugged in right here. Because sometimes when I'm on call with people, I want to show them what I'm doing on my phone. I just...
I feel like I have one around here somewhere too. I don't know. I could show. I got my Steam Deck. I could show it off.
Finally, cool.
It's over in the other room. I didn't think to bring it over. Do you want me to grab it?
Sure, if you want. You want to actually show it off.
Compare it to the Switch.
Yeah. This is gonna be I mean, obviously you get to see it in person. For us and anybody watching, it's gonna be the closest that some of us are gonna see it in person. I know I am not paying for that thing, even if it was ever available for me, which would probably be like 7 years from now at the rate that things are going, because I believe you did yours within like the first day or so.
Yeah. Sure, certainly took long enough.
Does it numb your hands after a while with that weight? Chad Middleton asks.
It's not heavy.
Yeah, I figured it wouldn't be heavy. Like, I mean, it'd be heavy by comparison to the Switch, but that doesn't mean it's heavy. You know?
It's really not. It's not much heavier than the Switch, honestly. They're about the same.
Difference, I would assume.
Yeah. So here they are. Wow, it's already kind of
dusty.
Dusty. How did it get dusty so quickly? Where's the camera? Here.
Yeah, I see it.
Anyway.
Thing is huge though.
Oh, it's very reflective.
Like weight was not the issue I was worrying about. It was how like big and cumbersome it would be.
I can see between them. Yeah, so it's quite a bit bigger.
Well, especially like the advantage the Switch has for transport is that you can always take the controllers off and it makes it smaller. That thing is always the size that it is.
Yeah. Now, if you look at it like here, the thin part is maybe 50% thicker.
Yeah.
You can see that, but it's a little bit thicker than the Switch. Well, then of course, that part you can't take off.
Yeah.
So, all right, let me put that down. So yeah, here we go. Here's sort of the controls on this side. It's really not as dusty as it looks.
Yeah.
Like when I look at it, I can't even see the dust. It's funny. The camera really picks up every last particle. Will that help? No, that's worse. The back is kind of interesting. There's like 2 buttons here.
Yeah. Those extra, I guess they're it's kind of trigger buttons. They're meant for your pinky and your ring finger.
Exactly.
But apparently, you're supposed to be able to map them as you want from game to game.
Yeah.
Well, that's the cool thing about it, right? They're PC games, so you can remap any button technically.
Yeah, you can remap anything. Here's the volume. Here's the power. Here's the AC adapter thing. Upgrading the storage is super easy. You just stick a card right in there. Pops in and out, no problem. I didn't actually realize it would be that easy. You don't have to like take off a battery case and then put the thing in and then put it's just pop it.
Yeah. Well, they probably saw how easy it was to switch out the Switch's memory, which is literally just flip up the kickstand and it's accessible right there. So they probably figured it has to be just about as easy.
So I'd have to look it up, but honestly, it's not even twice as heavy. It's like 50% heavier than the Switch. So, considering it's
a lot of it would just be ounces, like there's probably a lot of empty space in there because once the screen is a certain size, they're like, okay, ergonomically, we have to make the controller a certain size too.
Yeah. Now I have heard the fan on this thing. It can get quite loud.
Yeah.
If you're, playing I guess this has a fan too. I've never heard the fan on this thing. This one has
I have.
The fan. Really?
I've heard the fan on my Switch.
But this one has quite a big fan opening.
I
at the
think it
top.
was when I was playing Bloodstained. I heard the fan on the Switch. An area where there was
I
like a
haven't
lot of
installed that.
enemies. Yeah.
I have not installed that on here yet, but I can report. Someone was asking me on Twitter last night how the performance was, because I took a picture with Dragon Quest 11 installed or playing,
Yeah.
and someone asked me how it was, and it's great. I set the highest settings, set it to the highest graphic settings, no slowdown, 60 frames per second, smooth as butter.
No,
Of course,
see the real reason you show that, trying to indoctrinate people into playing Final Fantasy 13.
Now, Final Fantasy 13, the reason I am going to look closer at that is that there's a lot more settings as far as the graphic settings are concerned. You can set it to, you can set the anti-aliasing and shadow DPS and all this shit. So I'm going to fiddle a bit with that, but I pretty much set it to about what I set it on here on my PC. Seemed fine, amazingly.
Well, it's also an older game. Like, how much can they do to it? On it, right? Like, you could probably run Final Fantasy 13 on the Nintendo Switch in the original PlayStation 3 like settings and everything.
But there's also Final Fantasy 15.
How does that run?
There we go. I'm reluctant to install it because it's 100 gigs.
Yeah.
And the thing has 500. So I might install it just to try it out, but I don't think I'll keep it on there because it'll take up 20% of the storage of this thing. So
that's what I don't have it installed on my computer or like my hard drive currently, because like I've played it. There's still stuff I want to do in it, but it's like one of those things. It's like I wish I just.
Oh, I'm losing you.
Sorry, my mic cut out for a second. I was saying I wish I had it installed for like a rainy day. It's like, oh man, there's stuff I want to knock out in the game that I still haven't done. Like Noctis is only level 99 out of 120. It'd be cool to go back in and do some of the side stuff or even do some of the comrade stuff. But it's not like the thing I want to do as a priority. And that's a lot of data to just be taking up for a rainy day.
Yeah. Why okay, there we go. So Bloodstained is one of the ones that works, but it's not perfect.
Yeah.
So I'll have to install that. But so I'm gonna try it just to see. I mean, I don't know. I guess it doesn't hurt to install it and then uninstall it. But I hadn't, just because it's so big. Chad says, have you tried emulation? No. I'm not entirely sure how. Like, I don't know how you do that. So I only just got it yesterday. So far I've only played with the SteamOS interface and installed games on it. But I do have Risky's Revenge on here. I have Risky's Revenge and Shredder's Revenge.
Yeah.
A couple of revenge games.
See, again, that's my big problem too. Like, even wanting one, it's like, but any game I actually would want to play on the go, as opposed to sitting down and like really enjoying it as a console experience, I already have on the Switch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the Switch is lighter, not necessarily in terms of weight, but in terms of being able to transport it. I can fit it in a much smaller space.
Yeah, I can actually fit the Switch in my pocket most of the time. If I wanted to. If I really want.
Talk about fitting a Switch in the pocket. My brother has no problem. Switch Lite, I think I've said this before, until actually like holding a Switch Lite in my hand, like when I picked his up, I had no idea just how much smaller it was, right? Because a lot of measurements, right, like when we're doing screen measurements, it's diagonal, right? Which is very misleading on how fast that scales, because you have to do a 16 by 9 Pythagorean theorem of proportionality to figure out like what really is the size difference between a 17 and 15 inch monitor and stuff like that, right? So when they tell you that the Switch is I think it's 6.5 inches across or something like that. I forget how big the normal Switch is, but then it's only like 5 inches for the Switch Lite. You don't really immediately wrap in your head what that actually means, but then you pick it up in your hand like, this thing is tiny. It's like a phone.
Wow. Interesting. Forgot what I was going to say about that. I tried emulation. So yeah, I guess you can install other emulators and things like that, but I don't know. I got so many devices. I don't think I'm going to need to try to emulate. Oh, so the screen resolution is 1280 by 800.
Okay.
Is a little weird.
That is weird. I think we've been over that before. We were talking about it, because for 1280, it should be 720 would be the 16 by 9. So that's a 1610 screen.
Yeah. So, for instance, Dragon Quest 11 sets itself to 1280 by 720, so you get black bars
on the side.
I think you get black bars on the side.
Yeah, it should be on.
Or else it stretches it.
Oh,
I can't remember which.
I mean, stretching would be that bad
stretched.
for most games. You wouldn't notice it at just that little bit of a difference, but
yeah. But so weirdly, like, I don't know. I'll have to try and figure out what's happening, because when I played, so Final Fantasy 13 gives you the option. There are so many resolution options. You can set it to 1280 by 720, or you can set it to 1280 by 800. And so I tried 1280 by 720, and everything was squished. Like, everyone looked much thinner than they should. I set it to 1280 by 800 and it looked perfect. But even though it looked perfect, there were now bars on the top and bottom. So I was like, what happened? It's kind of weird. Because I think certain games are just not prepared for weird resolutions.
I'm not surprised that Square had options for that, though. I would guarantee you, if you go into 15, that they'll have options for all of those and nothing will look squished, because the way 15 was made is it would just be camera options while the environment would still be rendered regardless, right? But also 15's got options for up to like 4K and stuff, or actually no, even higher. I think it's like up to 8K. They grandfathered in up to 8K just in case, which is why like the game takes up so much fucking data, because of all the textures in the world are made for like 8K.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think the bottom line is any modern, like very modern game is not going to have a problem with it, because they'll be able to rescale to whatever.
Yeah, because most modern games, it's just a camera thing, you know?
Yeah. But older games might get weird, either get squished or stretched or whatever, because they're just not prepared for that sort of thing. But it was weird, because so I got Final Fantasy 13 to look correct, but it did end up with bars on the top and bottom. And Dragon Quest, okay, that's what happened with Dragon Quest as well, because it looks correct to me. Let me make sure. I just want to actually play for a second just to make sure, but I'm pretty sure what happened is it looks perfect. Come on. Come on. They had so many loading screens. Okay. God. What up? Okay, Yeah. So what happens is it looks perfect, but there's bars on the top and bottom. I don't know if you can tell.
Yeah, I can see.
But there's a little bit extra black at the top and on the bottom. So it doesn't take up the full screen because it didn't have an option for 800 resolution. It only has 720. Which is a little surprising because it's a fairly new game. But, what happened? Okay, just sleep. That's the feature. He's read my mind and said, I think we're going to sleep. Oh, maybe it's out of batteries. But, yeah, so your mileage may vary depending on the game. So, yeah, I was a little surprised.
It's going to be 80 pixels on the top and bottom each. Because it's a 160 pixel difference.
Only
right?
40.
Oh, 40.
Oh. Actually,
the 720. No, yeah, it is only 80. So he had to be 40 on each. I don't know why I was doubling it. Yeah.
Yeah, so there'll be 40 pixels on the top and bottom. It's not. I didn't even notice. I didn't notice until just now.
Like 40 pixels isn't a lot
because it looked perfect. Yeah. Which also kind of makes me wonder, like, why were there bars on the bottom with Final Fantasy? Maybe not. I don't know. You barely notice. So, if they made the screen smaller, you'd end up with the same proportions. Just there's an extra 80 pixels that you don't always need.
You know what? It's better than some of these poorly ported N64 games on the Switch, right? Where they have like the border for the Switch 64 thing, but then Paper Mario still has a black border around it. Plus that, I'm like, dude, this is just like the problem with the Virtual Console of Paper Mario, where it just had this black border around it. I'm like, what is wrong with their copy of this game? Because when I played it on a TV, there wasn't this border. I remember playing it on the
properly
TV.
scale.
Yeah.
See, I don't get that sometimes. So like everyone, I have an HD TV.
Yeah.
Sometimes if I switch to like a non-HD channel, instead of just blowing it up, there's a border all around.
All around.
I'm like, they could just, I'm like, why doesn't it just blow up? But it's like because it's not HD, there's a border on the side. But it is HD. It's a widescreen image, so there's a border on top and bottom.
Well, so there's a further problem. This might actually be the issue with Paper Mario, because I've never tried to emulate it on a computer. Mostly because the Paper Mario, even the base version, was bound for crashing. So a lot of emulated versions crash unless somebody's gone in and fixed with things. It explains why there was so much crashing in the Switch Online version. But one of the things is all CRTs had trim area, kind of like if you're making a comic or a trading card, right? There's like a trim to a print, your print bleeds. But like all CRTs had a trim area because of the way the actual frame of the TV worked and how it curved into it. And some things were okay with like feeding the picture into the trim because there's nothing important on the edges anyway. So it's like, cool. The actual frame of our film can bleed into the trim. You're not losing anything. But some things would actually put a black box around to frame it so that everything fit within the trim of the CRT. That might actually, now that I'm thinking about it, might be why Paper Mario is the way it is. The actual default version of the game might have a black box around it that you do not see on a CRT TV because of the trim.
Yeah.
CRTs are weird.
Yeah, there's this I've been watching this channel, I forget what it's called, on YouTube, that goes into old school games and looks at assembly code. And they go into these, they're called blanking areas of a CRT, where usually it doesn't write to the screen, but you can. I mean, nothing's stopping you. Nobody will see it, but it's usually just extra error. You can do more calculations or whatever. So that's interesting.
What's most interesting, though, is that it seems to really only be a prevalent thing once we get to the 64 era, right? Because if you go back to anything that was assembled for the NES or SNES, or even before that with older companies like Atari and stuff like that, and you go to emulate it, it always fits the full margin of resolution. It's only once you start getting to like the 64 and PlayStation and Dreamcast era do we start getting games where they leave intentionally blank space like that.
It may be that around that time, they probably got away from actually writing these games in assemblage.
Yeah, probably.
And so how it got displayed on the screen was defined more by the hardware. The hardware would say, "Here's your screen, write to it," and
that could be too.
Probably didn't have as much control.
No, because I know the 64 was still mostly assembled traditionally, because we've seen like the 64 dev kits, right? With like but they did still do it almost like a transitory period, right? There was a CD drive on the bottom of the 64 dev kits that would plug in, right? So it was kind of like half old school, half. I think I might have lost everything. Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Okay, because you froze up on me. I think we lost bandwidth for a second. But yeah, like if you actually look at the old 64 dev kits, they start to look like what the next, like the Xbox dev kit and stuff was going to look like afterwards. And it does kind of seem to be like almost a transitory period between how games used to be written and how games will be written. But for like the PlayStation and Dreamcast, those were already full disc, and I believe they just started writing everything fully computer for both of those systems. Like they weren't assembled.
That doesn't necessarily mean. Yeah, but I mean, I don't know that the form factor of the cartridges necessarily dictated how you program them.
No, like, not necessarily.
It may.
I'm just looking at the way the dev kit was itself. I believe there was still a 64 assembly that exists.
But did you write and I have no idea. But when you wrote Nintendo 64 game, did you write it in something like C++, or did you write it in assembly language?
Yeah, that's I don't know. I think it was very complicated. A lot of people had a lot of issues writing things for the 64. Because it was like, again, it's like this weird transitory by that time, period.
Yeah, but I'm guessing in order to do like the 3D games that they had for the 64, you would have had to write it in C++.
At least partially. That was the thing, right? Because they had to do all the modeling and stuff outside of the system, right? Like they had to drag in files. A lot of the textures were that way too. Because it's not like the old sprite-based systems where, you can make everything on the computer, but you're basically just remapping it once you get into assembly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whereas in both the NES and SNES, I can tell you for sure, you can control the freaking scan lines, right?
You can, yeah.
You can tell, like all the way down, you are in full control of exactly what's written to every pixel on the screen, so because you're writing it in low-level assembly language. So, I mean, you're a step above just writing the damn thing in hex. So, it may be that when you get to the N64, they have a new layer in between where the programmer can't control,
I'm sure.
The operating system essentially controls what's written to screen. You just need the operating system, which makes it a lot easier to program, but it might be the reason why.
I think a lot of that was probably decided when they were working with the dev kit directly, right? Like that's this whole reason they're loaded up, test cartridges and stuff before you go to print, make sure that everything is actually in tune with the hardware and stuff like that.
Yeah. What's interesting is I could get the name of this YouTube. It's a fascinating YouTube channel. If I look at my history of it, I'll see. There's a YouTube channel called Displaced Gamers.
Yeah.
That goes into source code and things like dev kits and stuff like that. And like, he takes apart an NES controller and explains how it all works. Developers didn't sometimes had to create their own dev kits.
Yeah.
Like Rare, apparently when they were working on NES games, actually built their own test or dev kit, which was kind of interesting. They basically took a Famicom and took out some chips and took it apart and then soldered on some other things. And boom, they had a test kit. Like Nintendo didn't supply that.
Oh yeah. Well, have you seen
back
like
in the day, apparently
when we start getting to disc, right? Where about at this point, consoles are basically like home computers. They're personal computers that are just stripped down to only whatever the game needs to operate, right? As opposed to just the hardware motherboard based system that we had previously, where they don't even need an operating system. PlayStation has an operating system. You actually go into its menus and stuff. So do the GameCube and the Dreamcast and all that. And we get to this. If you actually look at like the dev kits for them, even some of them are custom made, but some of them provide. They're basically just desktop computers, and the very top of it is the console, just like mounted to the top, right? And it makes sense because when you run the games, and you're basically just running it in a personal computer. And that's also why a lot of those more disc-based games are so much easier to port, because you're basically just changing the internal settings to work with the modern operating system.
Yeah. That's the other thing. Companies apparently had to. Yeah. The companies apparently had to either write their own or borrow somebody else's assembler or compiler for their assembly code. Of course, the assembly code was pretty standard. I think it's called 6502 assembly that you had to use for NES. But companies like made their own compiler.
Yeah.
It's like NES days were like the Wild West. Like, I don't know how any games actually ever got made, because apparently Nintendo wasn't about to help. So.
No, it's because people were determined. That was the thing, is like games.
Yeah.
Especially like, because everybody, arcade was easy. Anybody could have made an arcade game as long as you had the money to build the cabinets. That was it, right?
Yeah.
But like, you remember there was the Crash, right? And then Nintendo comes, and now video games, especially for home, are selling like hotcakes again, even better than they were with like the Atari and stuff before that. So it's like everybody's got to get in on it, and they were determined because this is a big money maker. You got to jump in.
Yeah, and I think Nintendo was like, "Hey, you want to make an NES game? Well, go buy yourself an NES and take it apart and figure out how it works. And good luck."
It's also why we have so many games that are like on these weird shaped cartridges that aren't like the Nintendo official cartridge, because some people would just like make their own cartridges.
Yeah, because in order to be licensed Nintendo, they had to make the cartridges for you.
And you had to have that official Nintendo seal on there.
Yeah. And so, companies, they've had to figure out how to bypass the lockout chip. But once they did that, they can make their own cartridges.
Yeah, I think it was RBI Baseball might have been one of the ones that I had. And it had like this weird like roofed cartridge that was like black.
Yeah, yeah. There were two versions of that. There was an official and an unofficial one. And that was one of the companies, who was that? RBI Baseball.
That was Tengen.
Tengen, yeah. So that was one of the companies that Nintendo sued because of that. And I think it was like a landmark case where I think Nintendo lost.
Yeah.
In the end, it was like, no, they reverse engineered your shit. Too bad.
Yeah. I had one of
next time
too.
Next time, make it better. Yeah. Yeah, Tengen basically reverse engineered and was like, screw you. Make it better next time.
Honestly, though, and it's kind of weird to me. Like, you think it should be the other way around. You go look up prices for those cartridges, and the official Nintendo cart is actually worth more than the original black cartridge. But, like, you think the original black cartridge should be worth more. I don't know. Maybe it's just because availability. You might be able to find more.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like part of history. Like, if I was going to pay more for one, it's like I'd probably pay the $5 more for the black cart than the actual Nintendo one.
I guess it must be they must not have made as many of the official ones. Yeah.
It was probably too late. Like, they had already made so many. It's like, yeah, now there's the official version, but everybody's got their copy of it. I
don't remember which they made first.
Because RBI 2 had a black cartridge too, so that means it already came out before Nintendo made the RBI cartridge.
I think what happened. So I think, and I've watched. There's a Nintendo. Or there's a video game historian video on this. I think what happened is they started out with a license from Nintendo, and so I think they started making the official ones, the normal shaped carts, but there was a chip shortage or something. Right in the late 80s, there was a chip shortage, and so they and a lot of other companies were like, "Well, then screw it. Let us manufacture our own. We'll find the chips somewhere else." And Nintendo was like, "No, fuck you." And so that's when they were like, "Well, fuck you back. We'll just figure it out." And so then they started manufacturing the knockoff ones that worked just fine. So I think they made more of those. And then Nintendo sued. And I think they had to take it off the shelf for a while. And then a judge said, no, you can put it back on. And then Nintendo ended up losing. So they just, I guess that's why there's more of the black cartridges.
Yeah.
Tengen's still around, aren't they?
I think they're part of Warner Brothers Interactive now.
Oh, I'm thinking of some Chinese company. Yeah, they must have got bought out eventually.
Gauntlet was also one of those cartridges too, because that was the same company.
Yeah. I think Tengen was a subsidiary of another company.
Probably.
Like it was I think they built that company, or they created that company specifically to make the knockoff NES cartridges. Was it a Capcom company? I can't remember.
Oh, okay. So if they do exist somewhere, it's because somebody else bought their games. They were originally part of Midway Games, which, Midway died over a decade ago.
No, Tengen was a spinoff from Atari.
Yeah, but their parent organization was Midway Games.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think Atari had like a contract with Nintendo, and in order to get around the contract, they created Tengen as a separate company that didn't have a contract.
I guess. Yeah.
It's tricky. Yeah.
Go
watch go watch the Internet Historian or the Video Game Historian.
But apparently Tengen died when Midway did, so whoever owns their licenses now, some of them might be under Warner Brothers, some of them might be under somebody else, who knows.
Yeah.
I miss Midway.
It looks like, Time Warner Interactive owns it now. So it doesn't really exist anymore, but I guess they bought it.
A lot of companies that just don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Speaking of licensing problems, weird segue. Lollipop Chainsaw remake had been announced earlier this year. I like Lollipop Chainsaw. I don't know if you've ever heard of this game.
I have. Oh yeah.
Okay. Suda 51. I'm a big fan of Suda 51 games. I like No More Heroes and stuff like that. Grasshopper. And it's getting its remake, and a lot of people were concerned from the original press release on it, because the director, which was Yasuda, said that there was going to have to be changes, right? I mean, Yasuda is Suda51. And he's like, oh no, changes, but we just want a remastering. And he said that this isn't going to be a remastering. Well, that's because of some communication errors. So he came out with some updates to what was said, made sure people translated it properly and everything, so there weren't communication errors this time. And one of the big reasons he said it wasn't going to be remastering is strictly because they don't have the license to some of the music that they had back then, so they're going to have to replace some of the songs. And to him, the music was a big part of it. That was like part of the storytelling aspect. So it can't be a true remastering without it. And you said like the primary goal of the Lollipop Chainsaw remake is to make it so players who wish to play Lollipop Chainsaw can do so easily, not to make a new Lollipop Chainsaw game. So he's not trying to do what a lot of these other companies are doing, where they're taking a story they've already told, but they're basically trying to make a brand new game out of it, which is what frustrates the hell out of some of us. Square. And he had a lot of different notes on this, but it's because 16 songs from the original game were unable to be in it due to licensing issues. And they're aiming to make it as close as possible, even trying to find songs that fit the same feeling as the ones before. Another big part of it that got people like really worried and upset from the original announcement was that he said they were going for a more realistic approach to the graphics, which again was a miscommunication. What he meant was that they would be taking advantage of modern rendering technology. So it's still going to be the same style, but they might use things like ray tracing to reflect the lights better, have more ambient occlusion and stuff like that to just give you this fuller feel to the game that wasn't available back then.
Cool.
So I am excited. And they were talked about censorship too, which Suda couldn't fully comment on the matter as the team hasn't yet discussed it with the platform holders yet. This sounds like Sony might be the biggest issue here. But they still are aiming to remake it as close to the original as possible, which may even end up being, I don't know, could end up with a delayed version of the game for different systems because Sony's just has to be more censored than the other ones. Or maybe because Nintendo can be less censored than the other ones. Microsoft has started following suit with Sony in some degree. I don't know. They're kind of bouncing back and forth with that. And Spencer really hasn't been clear on what their direction with censorship is. But the previous years, they've been like chasing at Sony's heels with their like censorship policies. And Steam is kind of okay with anything, but if you've already made a version for PlayStation, Microsoft, why would you make a different version for Steam? The fact that Nintendo is a lot looser, maybe you can hope that a Steam and Nintendo version might be less censored.
Yeah. It still just boggles my mind. Like, we think back and laugh about the fact that Nintendo in the 80s was like,
Street Fighter
no blood.
Blood. Like,
the blood has to be brown or white or whatever. And we're like, oh, wasn't that silly? Like, Nintendo, you're so silly.
To be fair,
10 years.
This was before there was a ratings bureau.
Yeah.
As well, so.
Yeah, but I mean, 10 years from now, we're going to be like, what the hell was Sony and Microsoft thinking? Like, they're so stupid. Like, why were they so dumb?
But people don't notice. It's just a lot of these games within the last couple decades that people complained about with Nintendo just didn't even come out in the West. If you actually look at Japan, they've been doing the same policy that they have now, that as long as a game is properly rated, you can basically put anything on Nintendo. They just want to make sure that it's not in the hands of kids. And that was their primary concern before both of our countries respectively. I forget how long it was until Europe put their ratings bureau out, but Japan and America were about the same time. Once there was a ratings bureau, they were a lot looser as long as things were properly rated. But yeah, Sony used to be the edgy one.
I mean, I didn't even understand, like, with the ratings system, I mean, Hollywood doesn't have to put up with this shit with movies, right? I mean,
well, they
can
kind
literally
of do, but they don't, right? So
they risk a higher rating.
Yeah, that's the thing, right?
That's it.
So here, it's really weird with the ratings board because it doesn't work exactly the same as like with the MPAA, right? Yeah. With the MPAA, it's probably a lot easier because you don't have to play through a whole game. You just have to watch whatever the movie is with its finite amount. But you can propose a rating. You have a review board that gives you your rating. Sometimes it's what you propose. Sometimes they disagree. Like, you said fuck too many times. You said you only said it 3 times, but we counted like 17 fucks in the movie, okay? You're lying to us, right? Yeah. But still, it's like, it's pretty easy to rate a movie. It's a finite amount of time to get through it. Now, with games, though, you kind of have to propose and show proofs of your game's rating because not everybody in the Bureau can play through every single game. And it's a bit more complicated. But still, we have a review board, right? It doesn't matter. The same policies should apply across the board. The fact that we have ratings, you should be able to trust that parents will make the right decision for their kids. But that's where Sony comes in. It's like, well, it's not a movie. You're not assigned your rating from the board. The board can reassign it if it doesn't agree, but you propose your rating, and we have our own people reviewing it here at Sony to make sure that you pass our platforming system. We don't care about the ESRB.
I know. That's bizarre.
Yeah, I know.
That doesn't make any sense. Like, okay, yeah, there's nudity or whatever. Okay, give it an M rating. End of story.
But they don't care about the rating, though, because they have M-rated games on there.
I know.
They care about content.
That's what I'm saying.
That's the that's the issue.
I know. I don't know. It's just it's regressive. Well, I mean, it's backwards.
Yeah, it's kind of like the deal between, say, certain streaming services and Netflix, right? Netflix, I would say, is probably more like Nintendo in this case, as a publisher, because they're the platform. We're looking at the platform. Technically, Netflix, I don't think, has to rate anything that goes onto Netflix because it's a subscription service. But they will have their warnings, they will have their ratings and stuff on there. It's up to them, but they don't care. They only care about the things that make them money, and that things are properly labeled. They label themselves. They actually, a lot of people just walked out because part of their job was watching through things to label them properly for Netflix, right? And they're like, I don't want to watch this thing. It shouldn't be on the platform. Sony is more like those people that all just left Netflix, that want to be on their platform where they actually get to curate what is and isn't on there because they don't agree with the content that's there.
Yeah, it's this guilt by association bullshit that, like, you know, they'll say, well, it's our platform. We don't want it on our platform. But it has nothing to do with you. You didn't develop the game. You didn't publish the game. It's a completely different company, but they don't want it in a box that says PS5, you know?
Well, and that's like, why so many Japanese companies are walking away from Sony. They have been for a while now. The smaller ones, because the AAA, they have such a built-in relationship with Sony that they're just going to keep making products for them. But like the mid-tier ones, the non-AAA, but you wouldn't quite call them indie. They've just been kind of doing their thing for a while. We'll call them AA companies. A lot of the AA companies have been walking away over the last 5 years over the weird censorship stuff that Sony's been doing.
Mm-hmm. And you would think, like, what prevents you from just burning your game onto a CD and selling it, saying, yeah, here you go, here's a PlayStation game. It doesn't have their approval. Things
kind of do, to a degree.
Is
partially.
there still like a lockout thing?
I do believe there's a lockout, but even if you got around it, One of the things is that the proprietary software, like I guess you could put it on a DVD because the system can still play DVDs if you want to make an older style game. But PlayStation uses Blu-rays, which Sony also has the patent on, and there are some weird things that go to burning Blu-rays for use. They've kind of like covered every angle they possibly could for playing games on the system. But at the same time, you could still just not be officially published from them. Because I don't know how Limited Run does it, where they take an indie developer and put it on. I think actually Limited Run's thing is that they only do games that are already on the like PSN, like on the store itself. That way they're not like putting a game on the PlayStation that they don't agree with. But that's actually the bigger thing. It's less to even do with the disc, right? Because most people buy games digitally now. A lot of people aren't buying them physically. So who cares if you print a disc? How are you going to get it to somebody? They just want to buy it off of the digital store. And that's where you want to be marketed. You want to be on that platform.
Yeah, kind of. And it goes back to like Apple, the whole Apple lawsuit where Apple controls their store. And it's like, well, I guess the court upheld their ability to control their own store.
Yeah.
So,
like, I
guess sure, if you don't like it, get a Switch.
Because I'm sure, like, going back to the RBI thing, if you did legally burn it onto a Blu-ray without violating any patents or anything and found a way around the lockout, the court would probably uphold the same thing. It's just not going to help you because what are you going to do? Ship out 50 Blu-rays to the people who want it?
Well, crowdfund it and ship it out to the 10,000 people that you get to.
Yeah, if you can. But then it's like, well, you're going to have to play it physically. It's like, well, what if I got the PlayStation that doesn't have the drive?
Yeah.
Right.
And you're screwed.
And that's another big thing for getting in the store. If we look at it, about half of, I think it's close to half. I think most people still opted for the one with the drive, but close to half of the people who bought this last generation, some of it because of availability, some of it because of price, opted into the model for Xbox and PlayStation that didn't have a disc drive.
Yeah.
It's close to like 40% or something. That's a big number of people who literally just couldn't play your game.
So going back to the story, compare
Yeah.
Yasuda's reaction, right? The lollipop chainsaw thing, to the dude from the Monkey Island game.
Oh, yeah.
It was just like, I quit the internet. Mean tweets. Like, this guy had the right reaction where he was like,
oh, yeah.
Okay, everyone calm down. Let me explain. Whereas the other guy, the Monkey Island guy, was like, it's too toxic. I'm not going to answer questions.
Yeah, it's so weird. Because, like, you would hope, like, playing Monkey Island, right? These guys seemed cool back in the day. And you're like, you would hope they would be memers or whatever. Like, these like gamers, coders, people who just spend so much time on the internet.
Yeah.
While, on the other hand, Suda is a memer. And you've played his games, the type of humor he has, but you've also seen, like, his interactions with people in person, like IRL. He's kind of a jokester, and he loves the memes too, especially like he really wasn't a part of Let It Die aside from like concept creation. Like he designed Uncle Death and he did a lot of the character designs, but it was more of a Team Grasshopper than it was a Suda 51 game. Does exist in this universe, but still he liked all the memes with like Uncle Death and stuff and all the stuff that was going on, and he's a really cool guy. Just his interactions on the internet in general, so you would expect him to respond in like, is like, no, I want the fans to be completely assured of what we plan to do.
Yeah.
I've always liked Suda. I think he's always had a really healthy mentality when it comes to game development. But he's also always been kind of one of those like weird artistic guys that just wants to do his own thing and is he's like the type of guy you would meet at Sundance, that he has like this weird vision for his movie and then he sees everybody smiling like they get it, and he wants to hang out with all the people who smiled at his movie, and he doesn't mind so much about the people who don't get it. He just wants to hang out with the people that do. That's how Suda strikes me. It's like, you like No More Heroes. You get it. Let's hang out.
Yeah. It's too bad more developers aren't like that.
Yeah. I agree.
There is a definite thin-skinned participation trophy, generation or something of developers who are just can't take the slightest criticism.
Yeah, I think it's because we don't have as many toy makers these days. And I'm using that term loosely, metaphorically, because I think there's a lot of people who never made a toy in their life, but they took to game design with the same mindset that a toy maker had, right? They're sitting here, they're working with their hands, and they're trying to craft something that they themselves would enjoy because they like, listen, if I think this toy is cool, a kid might think this toy is cool, right? Like that's the mentality that people used to have going into this. If I enjoy playing this game, somebody else will.
Yeah.
Which honestly, when I think about it more and more, I think the redirect, because you go back, games and arcades and stuff were actually originally targeted at young adults, people who had time and spending money. So they would go to the arcade, they'd drop a lot of like dimes and nickels and quarters and stuff into machines, depending on what machine you were playing, and they had enough to spend because a kid might play some games. How much are they going to be able to play? Right, especially on the quarter eaters. How much is they really going to be able to play? Right. Yeah. But then after the crash, it was kind of Nintendo that rebranded it as like a kids thing, put in the boys' toy aisle and stuff like that. And I think rebranding games as a kids thing was probably the healthiest thing that ever happened to video games for the duration of the time that was the major target. Because a lot of people came to it with that mindset of being a toy maker. But I think also as that audience grew and they knew that they could continue to sell to that audience, and then the audience got broader and broader, it became less of like that toy maker mentality and more of that like marketing advertiser mentality going into games of like, how can we just get the most people to buy this, as opposed to how can we get the people who would enjoy this to buy it.
Yeah. And then it became, how can we only create things that further our message?
Oh, the message too, yeah. Well, that's the two things, right? It's either how can we make something that furthers our message, or how can we kind of go back to those original arcade days of like trying to siphon money from adults that have it without having to make them actually go to an arcade. They've got an arcade in their pocket the whole time.
Yeah.
And man, some of these purchases, like even if you account to inflation, it's like these are way worse than quarter eaters ever were. Because I know I've heard about people wasting their whole paycheck on fucking Dragon's Lair trying to finally beat it, but still, like paycheck, what was that, like a fry cook? Wasted his whole paycheck doing it. How much money was that really? Right? Like he wasn't set back too much by blowing his paycheck on Dragon's Lair.
Yeah, it's not as bad as $10,000 on Diablo Immortal.
Yeah,
that's quite a few paychecks for most people.
To take a second mortgage on your house just to play Diablo Immortal.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Speaking of arcade games, Shredder's Revenge has sold 1 million copies.
Nice. That's great. You know what I would like to see? After they feel like it's sold its amount, I would like to see them go to like Arcade 1-Up and have a version of the Turtles machine that has Shredder's Revenge in it, so you could just play all of them on the same machine. That would be cool.
Oh, by the way, I got an email saying that Arcade 1-Up is coming out with a Miss Pac-Man game.
Yeah, I saw that.
I was like, oh, I guess they resolved the licensing issues.
They also have a really cool Street Fighter one coming out, but it's kind of disappointing because it still doesn't have Third Strike in it. I have no idea what the problem is with Third Strike and why they don't have a Third Strike machine.
I don't know.
But the Pac-Man
I still want to get that machine that had Ms. Pac-Man and Galaga together.
Yeah.
In the same machine. Those are probably my two favorite arcade games of all time. So.
My problem is we have the machines out in the garage, and I've touched them a few times. I just don't really find myself playing them, and it's just like,
yeah,
I'm already in here. I'm already doing things. I like to take a little break or whatever in between working on stuff, but it's like, do I get up? Do I go all the way out to the garage to stand there at a machine while other people are watching something on the TV or whatever? Or do I sit here in my chair and just run a dungeon in Final Fantasy before I get back to working on whatever I'm doing? I don't know. It's a tough option. It's a very tough choice.
Yeah, and my problem is my neighbors already complain every time I cough. Can you imagine if I had like a loud arcade machine? I guess you can change the volume, but...
yeah, actually, I know the Pac-Man one we have in there. And, it's an older one that I think was is Miss Pac-Man, but it was before the whole dispute thing happened in the first place. Has a headphone jack in it, so you can actually just plug your headphones right there on the top of the console, and you just listen to it while playing. So yeah,
I'm still gonna wait until I move.
Well, yeah, because then you have to disassemble it and move it and everything. Pain in the ass.
Well, I have a pickup truck, so...
Yeah, but I mean, they're smaller than a normal cabinet, but that's still going to take up quite a bit of space in a pickup truck if you don't disassemble it.
Yeah.
But if you do disassemble it, then it's just like basically pieces of plywood that have decorations on it, and then enough electronics that you can fit in a box and a monitor. That's like, it becomes a lot easier to move once you take it apart. But then you have to put it back together again, and it's basically IKEA. It's an IKEA arcade cabinet.
You didn't watch very much Seinfeld, did you?
I remember. Oh, I watched a lot of Seinfeld, but I remember the Frogger episode.
Yeah,
yeah.
They had to like somehow rig it so that it wouldn't lose power, because if it lost power, it would lose all the high scores.
Yeah, and
so they couldn't take it apart or anything. And then George had to take it across the street. And
well, the real problem is, like, what was he going to do even after he got it across the street, right? Did they have two different power points that they could plug it? He's going to have to unplug it to switch the power anyway.
No, that's what that was the whole thing. They rigged it up with a battery or something.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't see this plan working even if it didn't get crushed by a truck.
Yeah.
Though that was a very satisfying hit when it was just like, when you see the whole thing.
Yeah, right. Can you imagine? The truck just didn't even slow down.
Yeah.
It was just like... Speaking of which, that actually brings up another thing that I wanted to talk about. I tried Frogger on the PS5, which is a PS3 game that you have to stream. Oh my God. It sucked so bad. The streaming, I'm like, dude, I have a 500 gigabit internet. It's probably as good as it could possibly get.
Yeah. Unless somehow you were getting like, because I don't think at a certain point, even having like a terabit would not make a difference. Like at a certain point, you could put as much data as you want in there. If the streaming service sucks, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it would be better if I had fiber, but I doubt it, because I doubt that was the problem. I couldn't play it. I couldn't beat the first screen because the lag was so bad. Just like I'm like pressing,
because it's probably a server end issue.
Yeah, it doesn't always pick up your inputs, and so then you press it twice, and then he jumps twice, and I'm like, this game is unplayable. It's unplayable. So yeah, the PS3 games on PS5 absolutely suck.
Well, I think that's like the issue with a lot of the most modern games. You don't notice it, because with all of the different physics going on in a modern game, and honestly, modern video games are super fucking jank, but you're used to it being jank, and there's so many interactions that the games themselves have kind of just become easy, right? Like, you have to account for all the collisions and stuff like that when you're making a game, that like controlling a character has become easy. If, I don't know, you lose a second of connection, it's not going to be the end of the world. Your character's still just going to walk like 5 feet forward or whatever. Or you have to time platforming to have like 5 feet of grace area on either side of the landing point, just because of weird things that you didn't do in these old games where everything was almost pixel perfect. It's like the tile that a character would land on was basically its hitbox, so it either landed or it didn't. You can't, like, even some PS3 games are still built like old arcade games where it was like emulating this character takes up a tile, so they land on the tile. You can't play any of those games with any amount of lag. You're just fucked, just dead in the water.
Yeah, because I mean, it's a twitchy game. It's a precise. That's the whole point of the game, is you have to have very quick, precise movements in order to beat it.
Imagine playing like Galaga with lag, right? And you thought you dodged the thing, but it turns out visually you missed the bullet, but actually because of lag you got hit by it, dead.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why they even bothered to do the streaming thing. Yeah. I mean, like when I tried the Kingdom Hearts on the Switch, that was a nightmare. I was like, how can anyone play this? It is awful. Like, why do they even bother with this?
Stadia was dead in the water. Why is everybody else trying? People said, no, I don't want to try this. It's awful. And then the few people that did try it, they're like, this doesn't work. It's awful. Cool. We'll do what Google did. Everybody loved it so much.
Yeah, I don't even understand. If you can't get it to work natively on your hardware, why are they bothering?
I don't know.
To do this thing that everyone says is awful.
Because these big companies are actually money hungry. That's at the end of the day, they are ran by a board, so they don't care about a quality product unless they are assured that the quality is the reason they'll make the most money out of it.
Yeah. Well, stop it.
Yeah.
It's not ready. The video game companies wait until Internet 2.0 or something, because it's not going to work.
3.0.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know if it'll ever be ready, to be honest. Unless we get past having to send signals via light somehow. Because, I don't think fiber solves this problem. I don't know if servers are ever going to be able to handle the load either. Because right now it's only a few games that a bunch of people are connecting to, all on the same server. Like, I don't know what is... I think they use like Cloudflare or something for it. But it's all on the same servers. Imagine what happens if they're trying to do what Google was trying to do, where literally all of the games to all users are streamed. I don't think a server farm has the capacity for that. Even like some of the best websites get traffic issues, and they aren't putting anywhere near as much data through. YouTube, for like, I think a video game would have more data being streamed over than like 100 users watching 1080p videos at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, Google couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Stadia. So,
and Google's got the biggest server farms out of anyone.
Yeah. I mean, maybe like a turn-based RPG would work okay. That's about it. And how many of those are they even making these days? Like, those practically don't exist anymore.
Even then, like most phone games are turn-based RPGs, and they still download the bulk of the data that you need onto your phone. There's very little you have to connect to play, other than like account stuff. They need to make sure that whatever you do gets updated on your account, so that you're not like double dipping by getting first time rewards on things that you've already beaten and stuff like that. But like all the actual necessary data is there on your phone.
Yeah, I get what they're trying to do because, again, if you watch a few of these videos on how video games work, even though we're way beyond where we were with the NES, there's still a lot of calculations that have to happen every single frame in order to figure out what the next frame of video is going to be.
Yeah.
And so theoretically, if you have a super high-powered server doing all that calculation, that's great, but you don't have time.
No.
You don't have time to get it back over the internet.
Well, and the calculations are so much more complicated now, too. Because now to try to save time locally, they're doing like split calculations, right? So the world is constantly rendering its calculations of like what's going on in the world. And then the camera is its own set. That way, like the screen is quickly calculating what's going on by feedback to the world, which I believe this idea, which let 3D game or like CG and stuff be possible, actually stems from the innovation with the projection system in the original Doom, because it's the first one to come up with that concept. Like, oh, cool. So we can actually treat the world and the camera separately. We can do this for more games going forward. Then we could get like actual 3D models into the games and stuff using polygons. Like, it gets crazy. But roughly, they're still doing the same thing. Here's a set of calculations. Here's a reflected set of calculations.
Yeah. Ultimately, you need to get back to an answer as to what's the next frame going to be. And you need to get that back 60 times every second.
Right? Rollback netcode was supposed to be the solution to this in one way. Yeah. But even with rollback, both systems have the full account of what's going on, right? You have all the data on both systems that are talking to each other. All rollback is doing is pinging each other to make sure that they're constantly making the same calculations as each other. So it's like you're right next to you. And you can't do something like rollback for streaming because there's no account of that information on your device. It's all over there. So the only thing it's pinging is basically the camera. The camera is the only thing here, the monitor calculations, as like a temporary cached storage on your device that will get deleted when you turn the game off.
Yeah, it works fine when you're playing Smash Brothers or something, because the game's running here and the game's running here, and they just have to tell each other what they're doing. So
like
it's a very
submarines pinging.
Small, it's a very small amount of data being sent back and forth. But when the whole game is over here and it's trying to send you 60 frames or even 30 frames a second, it's not fast enough. It's not going to be fast enough. And at this point, why? This computer and, the PS5 and my freaking phone, it's a supercomputer right here.
I know.
What's the big deal? Just run it on here or, whatever.
Well, that's another problem.
Crazy.
So another problem with the wall that we're hitting, right, with technology, because people are trying to find ways around it. And honestly, the ways they're trying to find around it are worse than just dealing with it, right? Streaming is not a way around the computing wall. You can't just super compute everything for everyone in this huge farm of interconnected computers somewhere else. It just doesn't work. And I think, like, you think they've got technicians over there, people that understand how the technology works, and it's like, well, sir, the reason the games are so big on your hard drive is not because you're actually transmitting that much data. It's so that it can run all the computations it needs. Because, like, I think if you actually were to do the math of how much storage or, like, data the game effectively uses over its lifetime, it's going to be orders of magnitude more than the storage it takes place on your hard drive. It's just effective data, things that are happening in real time that don't exist outside of when it's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the RAM versus the ROM. I mean, it stores stuff in the ROM, but then the RAM is dynamic.
Yeah, and if you looked at how much like effective storage your RAM would be if you were to like string it together over its lifetime, I mean, I don't think the internet holds as much as some modern computers would calculate out to. That's actually why like Bitcoin mining was such a big thing. Like that actually all goes back to like what calculations a computer can do in real time versus storage.
Yeah. Now I know why they're doing this with the PS3 games. It's because the PS3 hardware was so fucked up.
Yeah.
It was so crazy. Like I've seen videos on how crazy the PS3 hardware was.
It's just better to actually have a PS3 running connected to a device somewhere and then stream it over.
Yeah. So they don't want to. It's extremely difficult to emulate, but somebody's figured it out. There is a PS3 emulator, and I don't understand why Sony isn't like, let's just license that emulator and package it in with every game.
Is that emulator finally working well?
I thought it was. I thought that they...
Because I remember checking in on it, like, I want to say 5 years ago, kind of in the middle of the PS4 era. They had started it, but, you know, again, the problem is with just how jank the PS3 is. And, I mean, 5 years is enough time if you have a decent community pecking at it to solve the problems. I just haven't checked back in on it again.
Yeah, I think in very recent, just in the last year or two, they've sort of figured it out, and it still doesn't work with every game, obviously.
Yeah.
But like they've got it working with a good amount of games, and Sony could like literally take that, just like Nintendo, basically just put an emulator on the Switch. They could just put the emulator on there. Yeah. It might take up a lot of room, but at least the games would run native or locally.
Yeah.
But maybe they don't. Maybe they're working on it. Maybe.
Well, actually, how much? How big is the emulator? That's a big question. Right.
Can't be as big as the games.
No, it can't be, right? Because even most emulators are small, but it depends, because you're basically having to rerun the entire PlayStation 3 operating system and additional hardware emulation. But, like, the games were also fucking huge for the PS3 by comparison. Yeah. I feel like you could probably find a way to, like, if you were to take their emulator and having the resources at Sony to make it even more lightweight, right? Like, just whatever they started with. You might even be able to basically just do a virtual console, right? Like, where the game runs as part of the emulator. You just make it one executable for each thing. Yeah.
I mean, it's on Linux, which I imagine is what they'd have to use. It's 65 megs. At least that's what I'm looking at.
That's literally not bad.
PS3.
You wouldn't even notice the change to the game file. Like a lot of these 10 gigabyte games from the PS3, like you wouldn't even notice. It's like a patch. That's all it is. It's like a little patch that happened.
Yeah, and I mean they could treat it like GOG games, like DOS games. Every game that you download comes with the emulator. So I must have
just got like a DOS box
20 copies of DOSBox.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course with DOS games, DOSBox is like 10 megs and then the game is like 5K. But in this case, the emulator is 65 megs and the game is going to be like, what, 10 gigs or something like that?
Something like that. Isn't it kind of crazy to think, though, like
30?
how much space DOSBox takes up when you're like, I'm pretty sure the original operating system I would have ran some of these the oldest games on wasn't even that big.
Couldn't have. No. Yeah, my original, when I bought my first IBM PC, I think it had a 30 megabyte hard drive. 30. Yeah. That was it. Maybe it's 300. No, I think it was 30.
Would take up like very little. Because I'm pretty, was this even a full operating system or was this like a BIOS system?
No, it would come with DOS, like DOS 3.0 or whatever.
Yeah.
And you could get Windows, but that wasn't really an operating system.
No, it's like Windows 3. Like you just pop.
Yeah, Windows 3 was a GUI.
Yeah.
They ran on top of DOS. So the DOS was a full operating system, but tiny.
Yeah.
Compared to, 65 megs compared to something. Was PS3? Were those Blu-rays or were those DVDs?
PS3 was using Blu-rays already.
I think they were.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like up to what, 35 gigs,
Yeah.
something like that. That's nothing. They could just package it. RPCS3. Sony, get to it. Open source.
Well, Sony always had problems. That, like, just as a wrap up, going a little late since we started late.
Yeah.
But if you remember, streaming on PS3 and 4 was already hard enough. 4 not as much, but 3 had an encoded version of HDMI. So you actually needed to either go back and find your composite cables and have some type of like the oldest version of the Elgato that could pick in composite, or you had to find some workaround because of their like weird specially encoded version of HDMI. It had a different name. It was like other like 4-letter name that had like a C in it. But like you couldn't. I tried. I had no idea about this. How I found it out was I took my Elgato and I wanted to stream Grand Theft Auto 5 online that we had on the PS3, and it wouldn't pick up. I'm like, why wouldn't it pick up? It's like, yeah, it's specially encoded. It won't. It's not HDMI. Like, what do you mean it's not HDMI? It's an HDMI cable. What are you talking about? So stupid. Everything Sony does is stupid, especially with their fucking proprietary memory card for the Vita, which is what killed the Vita. People in Japan would have otherwise loved it, but they didn't even sell that well back at home because of the proprietary memory card.
Now, I will tell you, apparently there's only 82 playable games on this emulator out of 3,000. There's only 82.
It's okay. So, most of the other games are PC compatible anyway.
Yeah. But hey,
that's another problem.
It's 82
right?
more.
Like some of these games, I get if it was like a Sony only game, right? And that you have to stream that. But for the stuff that was like cross-platform, it's something that has like a PC version, especially as like modern consoles are basically running off of something akin to Windows anyway. Why don't they just ask the original, like the company, hey, can you just send us the PC port of that game?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we'll just quickly port it to the PS5. It's not that hard. Like, just send us the port.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of them were probably made in an older version of Unreal, and Unreal is built to be able to update older engines. They could probably just take those old games, load it up, like whatever, like send like a hard drive or like a thumb drive or whatever that has all the files, load it into Unreal, and then just port it, because the Unreal Engine 5 has a button for publishing things to PS5, and just let it sit there overnight as it encodes or however fucking long it takes.
Yeah.
Like, it can't be that hard.
I don't know. Yeah, don't just that's my message. Don't plan on playing PS3 games.
Yeah.
On your PS5. Don't get PS Plus for that, because
yeah, Final Fantasy 13 being a big example of that. Like, it should be super easy to get that onto the PS5 because there's a Steam version of it.
Final Fantasy 13 isn't even available on there.
I know.
The PS3 library even sucks. I mean, there's like 30 games on there. I'm like, what?
Square could do this.
That's fewer
than you've got the files.
Fewer than the
just
simulator.
Republish it. I'm sure. What do they use? Like the CryEngine or whatever they do for their games. I'm sure you can easily just put it on PS5 because you've been pushing all your games past generations, and you still have the raw data for 13.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't know.
By the way, the Final Fantasy 13 on the Steam Deck, the only reason that it says that it's not 100% is because the intro screen where you select the resolution, you have to use the touch screen. Like, because it doesn't, you can't use the control things. You just have to type what you want.
Because that's the only thing that mouse on the computer. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the only reason it's not. I mean, other than that, it works perfectly on the Steam Deck. Which kind of makes me wonder why 13.2 says that it doesn't work. I wonder if they're lying. I don't know.
I don't know. I've never played the PC version of 13.2, so I don't even know what you do in the setup or anything like that. I only played it on PlayStation.
It looks the same.
Yeah.
It's the same as the 13.1. There's an initial screen that pops up where you select your resolution and some other features, and then once you're done with that, moves on to the game.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh well.
Well, I think we've gone over long enough for making it with the beginning. Fun conversation. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoy the show, please share it with somebody else who might enjoy it. If you really, really enjoy the show, consider giving a donation to streamlabs.com/Vomitorium live. Really helps us out with the monthly hosting fees. And also just kind of makes us feel good. Everybody likes a donation. We'll see you guys in the next episode.
Bye.